Welcome to episode 21 of the it's episode 22, aren't we? Yeah, episode 22. Okay, welcome to episode 22 of the Accepted Authority podcast, where we help solve a common growth challenge. I'm Andy Marmont, and with me as always is Greg Roworth. G'day, Greg.
G'day, Andy. Good to be here.
Fantastic to have you. Now, today we are going to talk about how to market ourselves in this new digital economy. And specifically, we want to talk about entering the pipeline. When we think about marketing our consulting firm, quite often we think about it's about getting sales. And yes, look, we all need sales to grow, right? But this is more around thinking more strategically about the fact that not everyone's ready to buy. And there are different steps in that journey to get to that buying stage. So we're going to talk about what are the steps to help your client enter the pipeline, and then how do we strategically set a plan and a system to be able to sort of move them along, or at least understand where they're at in that sort of cycle. So we might start initially, Greg, talk us about what we mean by entering the pipeline. Why is it important when we're thinking about how we're marketing ourselves?
Yeah, well, great question, Andy. I think it's really important that we understand this concept of building a pipeline for our sales, because it's very easy to think that we need new clients, we need new sales. So our marketing intent then is, how do we get new sales? How do we get new clients? And that's like a big leap from nowhere to a client in one step. So the marketing we tend to do, and probably most of all on our websites, is selling our services, extolling all the virtues of what we have to offer as a firm, and trying to get our clients to understand that they need to buy our service or make an inquiry. And I think the first step I see on a lot of consultants' websites is give us a call, free consultation. First step is sort of jump right to that level of talk to us. And so realizing that that's a huge leap for a lot of people, and understanding the reluctance of people to get on a call where they perceive that they're going to be sold something. And everyone understands that a free consultation is basically a sales call. So there's a real barrier to entry when that's our intention in our marketing, to get someone on a sales call. So understanding the pipeline concept is really, again, understanding the buyer's journey, and that the buyer needs to go through a number of steps before they are willing to buy. So bringing our marketing back to understanding the stages in our pipeline and helping people enter that pipeline with an easy step. What's an easy way to get into that pipeline? So for a lot of people, that's giving away a white paper, or looking at a video on YouTube or LinkedIn, and providing a next step to how can they get more information. That's an easy step to take. But for us, as the consulting firm, and having a marketing process, getting someone's details or their email address, their name on our database gives us permission, and they imply that permission by signing up for that, to continue to market to them. So I think that entering the pipeline is, what's that first step that we can offer someone something of value, where they're willing to give us some details, so that we're then able to follow up on that initial step and provide more value and more information to them until they're ready to buy and ready to have that sales call.
Fantastic. And that's a great point, Greg. I think the starting point is really, we don't want to go straight to the sale, but it's a lot of people now, and we know through Gartner research, is that B2B buyers are increasingly more reliant on using online to research and actually qualify and look at options before they even get to a salesperson. I think one of the really interesting stats that I found is that with millennial buyers, with millennial people who are really going to be the buyers of the next sort of 10, 20 years, most likely, they have a real reluctance, or at least a real skepticism for salespeople. They just don't want to deal with salespeople. They'd much rather go online and look at the options. So that's why it's critical to be able to have a really strong understanding about entering the pipeline, as you say, Greg, and giving and treating your customer as if he or she is not ready to buy right now, but simply provide that platform to be able to share the right sort of information that helps them get to that decision. And a quick story, I spoke to a consulting firm this week, and I asked the owner, so how did you find me? And they said, oh, well, I did an online search, and I searched for, B2B lead generation firms, for example, and you came up. And I was sort of thinking, that's a unique case where that person is ready. They're in the market. They're thinking, I need this service. But generally speaking, you'll find that as you get to the more higher value consulting services, it's more of a research piece. Someone will make the decision, maybe leadership, and they'll say, okay, we need to look at a digital transformation, or we need to go through and have this sort of project. Can you have a look at some options? And there'll be a search process. So I think having the view that when we're marketing, people aren't ready to buy. I mean, some will be, and that's great, but most will be in that sort of research phase. Is that sort of how you see it too?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was actually just looking at a report yesterday where the research that the firm had done had identified that 80% of people search online for information before they're ready to buy, before they're willing to approach a salesperson. And conversely, 90% of consulting firms don't really provide anything in the digital marketing space in that lead up process in the pipeline area. It's all, here's who we are, what we do, give us a call. So there's a real mismatch in how we're going to market. Now, I think, the critical thing and the thinking that we need to have is not how do I sell my services, but how can I understand my clients well enough so that I understand the thinking and the changes in beliefs that they need to have on that buyer's journey, so that by the end of that process, they choose us as their only logical choice. But then work back to what's the first step? What do they need first to jump into that pipeline?
Yes, and Gartner in their 2025 sort of future of sales report says that consulting firms need to be the sense maker. They need to be the ones that help buyers, cut through that overwhelm and as you say, end up with that logical choice. Okay, so that's great. So we've established that there's that entry point. Talk to us, Greg, through the other steps in that sort of pipeline.
Yeah, well, I think that, we've talked about my 6 E's process before, and that's a real mirror of a pipeline, from just depends on the perspective that you're looking at it from. But, that initial enter the conversation phase is, what are we putting out there to the market that is really client-centric. I think, if we make that shift in our thinking from, being about selling our services to understanding what our clients need, then our content initially, probably fairly short pieces of content, because people aren't really looking for, that content. They might stumble across it on LinkedIn or YouTube maybe, but a short piece of content that sparks their interest, or really, our first aim is to get their attention, so that they say, well, that was interesting. What else has that guy got to say? Or, woman, if depending on who you are. So we then need to provide the next step. What is that next step that they're looking for, which is probably an answer to the problem that that they were searching around for initially. And that could probably be a longer piece of content, typically an ebook or a white paper, perhaps a short piece of video training, or even a webinar. There's a couple of options around that. The webinar could be even a third step. So I think breaking it down into what are your typical ideal clients want and what do they need to become educated around the best solution for their problem, which is obviously your solution, and what steps they need to be able to move gently, but almost ideally from your perspective, how can you create a slippery slope so that when they take that first step onto your education and content, that they're just going to slide down seamlessly into your sales process and automatically want to request a sales meeting by the time they've consumed those 2 or 3 pieces of content.
Yes, and being able to stretch the gap or have a sort of compelling event that allows them to self-identify as sort of what we're talking about here. And that can often be along the lines of illustrating through, I like models. I think we both love models. How are you going to identify where you are in the journey? You have a great model. I've got a triangle that sort of ascertains where people, the 3 big problems. I think this is also where it comes down to, from a marketing point of view, being very clear about, if you focus on one particular target market, then you are going to, from their perspective, become seen as that authority, as that person that they think, well, they're the right choice. And as we've said over this podcast, the amount of firms and customers that come to both of us and we ask them, well, why did he decide to engage with us? The answer is inevitably, well, you just specialize in consulting firms or, professional services firms. And if you apply that to your consulting firm, you'll just find that you'll get a lot more cut through. And again, it changes your mindset about marketing, because it's not like there's this huge amount of customer base that you're looking to attract. It's really just getting clear on that one. And you do that marketing over and over again with the same sort of messages for the same sort of customers, which is really what we're talking about here. Then you'll find that the quality, I found that the quality over time will increase, because you're cutting out the people that aren't really going to be the ones that you want to work with, and therefore marketing becomes easier, and then delivery becomes easier, and then the whole thing sort of changes. So
absolutely. Case in point, one of the clients I signed up last week had come from, I signed up to receive one of my ebooks, and then booked a strategy session, became a client, and didn't come from a source that I was aware of. Didn't come from networking, didn't come from any of LinkedIn contacts. So I asked him, how did you find me? And he said, well, I heard you on a podcast where I was a guest, and what you said on that podcast described me perfectly. Exactly the problems I'm having, the struggles that I think about and haven't been able to solve, and you just described that as if you were looking over my shoulder. And so I was intrigued, and obviously you've got a solution for that. So I wanted to find out what you did from that understanding of who I am, and so that intimacy of talking to one type of client, when they hear that, it's just like, wow, you're talking about me, and then the process just is automatic. And the sale was really, well, I didn't have to sell at all. I just had to tell him what the program was, the price, and then he was already signing up even before I almost gave the price, because he knew that I totally understood his situation and had a solution for him that was perfect for him.
That's wonderful. If you're, so what we're saying there is if you prescribe the problem, you're often credited with the solution.
Yeah.
So you've done that obviously pretty well. That's great. So really, we've covered off that sort of second stage of the pipeline where there is some interest. They want to know some more information. We've suggested a few different ways to then go about it. Say, well, what if they're like, well, you know what, I am interested, which is what's happened to me recently. Look, it's the end of the year. There's just something internally we've got to deal with, but can we talk in January? So what if it's I'm interested, but I'm not ready to sign right now? Is that where we talk about things like how do we nurture them along the journey? Things like email, cadence, communication, and other means. Yeah.
That absolutely, and definitely that happens at this time of the year, and sometimes during the year as well. There's something that needs to be done or completed before they're ready to start. So yeah, you don't want to just drop them and leave them, and call back when they said, "Oh, you said call back now." Are you ready yet? Where's your authority positioning gone then? So
Yes.
yeah, maintaining that communication and even enhancing the relationship by providing more value between that time that they said they were ready. It really, again, I think comes back to a concept that I've been hearing a little bit lately from people I'm reading and hearing from is treat your client as a client right from the start of the process. So don't treat them like a prospect and then they're a client when they pay you some money. Start treating them like a client right from the start of the relationship and adding value, giving more than what you get. Don't be afraid of giving away value. A lot of us, until we get over it, are afraid that if we give too much value, the client's going to run away and take our information, take our ideas, and go and do it themselves. So it's really important that we're able to give that value, treat them like a client right from the start, and get to the point where they just see so much value from us that they can't hold back from becoming a client.
I love that. It's like a quid pro quo, that's what a lot of the people in this industry sort of talk about. And as an example of this, I went through a sales process with a potential client, but at the end of it, I felt like it wasn't quite the right fit. He just wanted execution. He knew his strategy. He just needed someone to sort of execute. Our program, we have a foundational piece, which is really crucial to it. So I said, look, without the foundational marketing piece, I don't feel like it's what you need. I reckon you need this. Here's two options, and I actually called both potential providers and said, hey, this guy, I think he needs your services. This is the situation. And anyway, he was so happy that he said, like, I want to give you I'll be a reference for you, and I'll give you a I'll give you a Google review. So,
wow.
And he said it's very uncommon that would happen. And I think, well, I've done exactly what you've just said, Greg, and I promise we didn't speak before I spoke to him, but I just said, look, consulting to me is really, professionally helping someone. And I think you're right. Like if you treat someone in that same vein, you go above and beyond, you give them value. It's those little things. I mean, in 12 months' time, he might come to me and say, hey, I've got 3 friends that want your help, but it's not what it's about. It's simply about, exactly what you said, having that consultative approach right from the get-go, because you never know where these sort of conversations might lead, and you want to continue to build that reputation as a strong provider and very sort of focused on doing the right thing and adding value. So I think that's a great example. It's a great way to think about it.
Absolutely.
So I reckon we've covered some great points today in this episode. Entering the pipeline, thinking about how we treat our potential clients, and the way that we market is not to get the sale, but is really to is to understand that they will be at different stages. So we want to be the source, be the sage, be the provider of the information, so that they decide to ultimately choose us. If it's not right now, then down the track. Is there anything that you wanted to add that we might have missed, Greg, about this topic?
No, I think, I mean, there's, probably endless things we can say about it, but I think in a nutshell, we've probably covered the essence of it today. So I think that's probably a good place to leave it.
Fantastic. Well, that's excellent. I think we'll wrap it up there. Greg, as always, where can we find you online?
So LinkedIn is a great place. Just search Greg Roworth and you'll find me. Otherwise, on my website at businessflightpath.com.
Awesome. You can find me at Andy Marmont on LinkedIn, and on our website is concurve.com.au. This has been the Accepted Authority Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye.